Hi, welcome to Darren in the studio. Of course, I'm in my car again. Thought I'd do a quick video to address something which has recently come up, not just on YouTube, but it's been around for a while, and a knotty little problem for any performer really, whether they're a singer, musician, both, even sort of actors and anyone who performs really. Now, time stands still for nobody, and getting older can be, a pain in the bum. We all have sort of issues when it comes to age. As you get older, things start to change. You can't do certain things that you could do when you were a lot younger. And I know, when I sort of do shows, gigs with my tribute act, it's a struggle. It isn't as easy as it was when you first started doing it, and that's physically, vocally, and also mentally as well, because you've got lots of things to sort of consider when you're getting older and you want to still perform. You've got to think about your health, and you've got to think about the next day. When you do a gig, when we do one of our shows, sometimes it can be, almost like an 8-hour day, really, traveling, setting up, getting ready, doing the show, breaking it down, traveling. And I think a lot of people who don't perform in some way forget that age is something that is against you when you perform. This video really is something that I've sort of toyed on sort of talking about, and it's not something that is necessarily the kind of thing that I'd want to sort of go in my studio and sort of set up and sort of show records and all this kind of thing. It's just a talky thing really, and it's about giving musicians and acts, singers, a break. Recently, Paul McCartney performed for the Saturday Night Live anniversary in America on the television with his band that he's had for a long, long time now. And Paul McCartney is in his 80s. And, he's still got his health, he still can play guitar, he still writes music, he still puts out new material, His voice isn't what it used to be. Nobody at 80 odd year old is going to have the same vocal cords that they did, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It isn't going to happen because, your voice is like anything. It's a part of your body that starts to age. And there's no way, really, of getting around it. Of course, there are singers that still perform today that sound great, that are well into their 80s. People like Tom Jones still sounds fabulous. There are others, but it's very few and far between. Most singers, musicians that are still performing well into their 70s and 80s have had to adjust how they perform. And it's just a fact of life. And I always think that for those of us as fans, those that buy the records, those that listen to the music and have done for so many years, if we start to turn round and make comments like, oh, he needs to give it up, she needs to give it up, oh, they sound terrible, it's not our decision. It's got nothing to do with us whether an artist hangs up their singing boots, because it's what they, as long as they can still get up there and still perform and still give credibility to their performance, I don't particularly think it's a bad thing. I think, people like Paul McCartney, the Rolling Stones, Alice Cooper, one of my favourites. There are lots and lots of people, lots of acts, and I'm pretty much staying in the sort of rock genre, really. Elton John would be another one. These are people that can still perform today. They still have what it takes. I am reminded quite acutely of Paul Stanley, who in recent years clearly was struggling to hit those high notes, hit those, perform those songs like Heaven's on Fire, Love Gun, all those songs that are right at the top of, his vocal registry. And I think if you're one of those people that say, oh, he needs to give it up, they need to give it up, Paul McCartney needs to give it up, Mick Jagger needs to give it up, I suggest you just shut up and give it up yourself. Because think about the amount of pleasure these legends, and they are legends, true legends, icons, some of them, think about the pleasure that they've given us over the last 60, 70 years. Somebody like Paul McCartney, been around since, the early 60s. And for him still to be standing on a stage and not forgetting the words and singing relatively good, like I say, his voice isn't the same as it used to be. He knows that, we know that. Accept it. He's accepted it. I think it's rude to talk about these people in such a negative fashion. Like I say, there's plenty of musicians that aren't what they used to be, but they still perform today. David Coverdale is an excellent example. Paul Stanley from Kiss. Paul McCartney. People that still perform today that haven't really got the vocal range anymore because of age, not because of drugs or anything like that, or misuse of a lifestyle, but because age has caught up with them and it's caught up with their vocal cords, and unfortunately they haven't got that power anymore, but they've got something that they can offer. And for me to see Paul McCartney up on stage still performing at 80 odd years old is quite an incredible thing, and I think is something to be cherished and something to be admired. Paul McCartney, Paul Stanley, David Coverdale, there's lots and lots of them, like I've mentioned, have all lost something that they hold dear, and that would probably be that excellent voice that they're well known for. But think about, like I said earlier, the pleasure that they've given us over the decades that they've been performing. And we're so lucky to be alive and have experienced them. If we'd have been born 100 years earlier, we wouldn't have known about them. Or if we were getting sort of born now, the chances are, we'd have to discover them rather than experiencing them in the flesh, if you like. So to anybody that slags off musicians, singers more so, that have lost it a little bit, just think about who they are. Think about who Paul McCartney is and what he's brought to not just British music, but the world of pop music, of rock music. It started with his little band called the Beatles. How many people have been influenced by his little band called the Beatles? An incredible amount of musicians have come along and been influenced by their influences, if you know what I mean. So please, when you see musicians on TV or live, and they don't sound like they did back in 1979, don't slag them off. Don't give them a hard time. Don't go on YouTube and say, oh, he needs to pack it in, because you're just being a prick. It's not fair, because they've given you far more than you gave them. Yeah, you might have bought the records, and collectively we've given them very, very comfortable lifestyles. But in the end, they just want to carry on doing what they love to do. And I don't begrudge Paul Stanley, Paul McCartney, David Coverdale, any of the other singers that have struggled in recent years with vocals. I don't begrudge them getting up there and singing a song, because it's what they do, it's what they're known for, and we should cherish them, because really they are the ones that started it, someone like Paul McCartney. And I think they should be held in higher esteem than just telling them to pack it in and they should retire, because as far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't. As long as they can still do it, not embarrass themselves, and give it all they've got and still have that passion, then I say good luck to them. Thanks for watching the video. If you got this far, like, subscribe, you know the crack by now, and we'll see you soon for another video. Ta-da.